They ridiculed her for marrying a black man, calling their love a mistake. Despite the hostility, Grace and Marcus's determination remained strong as they changed the world together. How far will they go to prove love conquers all? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Grace nervously adjusted her name tag as she entered the bustling conference hall. The air buzzed with excitement, filled with educators from all over the state. Her heart raced with anticipation, eager to learn new teaching methods and connect with like-minded individuals. As she made her way through the crowd, Grace's eyes landed on a tall, kind-faced man standing near the refreshment table. He seemed lost in thought, studying the conference program intently. Something about his gentle demeanor drew her in. Taking a deep breath, Grace approached him. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Is this your first time at the conference too?" The man looked up, his warm brown eyes meeting hers. A friendly smile spread across his face. "Yes, it is," he replied. "I'm Marcus. Nice to meet you." "I'm Grace," she said, returning his smile. "What brings you here?" Marcus's eyes lit up. "I'm passionate about creating inclusive classrooms. I believe every child deserves a chance to thrive, regardless of their background." Grace felt her heart skip a beat. "That's exactly why I'm here too," she exclaimed. "I've always dreamed of starting a school where all children feel welcome and valued." From that moment on, Grace and Marcus were inseparable. They attended workshops together, scribbling notes and exchanging excited whispers. During breaks, they found quiet corners to discuss their ideas, losing track of time as they shared their hopes for the future. "I've never met anyone who understands my vision like you do," Grace said, her eyes shining with emotion. Marcus nodded, his voice filled with warmth. "I feel the same way. It's like we were meant to cross paths here." As the conference drew to a close, neither wanted to say goodbye. They exchanged contact information, promising to stay in touch and continue their conversations. Walking out of the conference center, Grace felt a newfound sense of purpose. Meeting Marcus had ignited a spark within her, making her dreams feel more attainable than ever before. She couldn't wait to see where this connection would lead them both. As the weeks passed, Grace and Marcus's connection blossomed into a beautiful romance. They found themselves spending every spare moment together, sharing their hopes and dreams over coffee or during long walks in the park. Their shared passion for education and equality only strengthened their bond. Grace loved the way Marcus's eyes crinkled when he laughed, and how he always seemed to know just what to say to lift her spirits. For Marcus, Grace's determination and kindness were a constant source of inspiration. Together, they felt invincible, ready to take on any challenge that came their way. However, as their relationship became more public, they began to notice subtle changes in the way people treated them. In Grace's small conservative town, whispers followed them as they walked down the street hand in hand. Some of her longtime friends suddenly became distant, making excuses to avoid spending time with the couple. At the school where Marcus taught, he overheard hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when he entered the teacher's lounge. A few parents requested their children be moved to different classes, citing vague concerns about his teaching style. One evening, as they sat on Grace's porch swing, Marcus sighed heavily. "I never thought loving someone could be so complicated," he said, his voice tinged with sadness. Grace squeezed his hand tightly. "I know it's hard," she replied, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "But what we have is worth fighting for. We're going to change minds and hearts one day at a time." Marcus pulled her close, drawing strength from her unwavering belief in their love. "You're right," he whispered. "Together we can face anything." Despite the challenges they faced, Grace and Marcus found solace in each other's arms. They spent long evenings discussing their experiences, offering comfort and understanding that no one else could provide. Their shared struggles only deepened their commitment to creating a more inclusive world. As they navigated the choppy waters of prejudice, Grace and Marcus clung to their dream of opening a school where all children would be welcomed and valued. They poured their energy into developing curriculum plans and researching funding options, finding joy and purpose in their shared vision. Grace and Marcus sat together on their favorite park bench, hands intertwined as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. Marcus turned to Grace, his eyes filled with love and determination. "Grace," he said softly, "I know we've faced a lot of challenges, but I can't imagine spending my life with anyone else. Will you marry me?" Grace's eyes welled up with tears of joy. "Yes, Marcus, 1,000 times yes," she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. As they embraced, both were acutely aware of the curious and sometimes disapproving glances from passers-by. But in that moment, nothing else mattered but their love for each other. In the days that followed, Grace and Marcus began planning their wedding. They decided on a small, intimate ceremony with only their closest friends and supporters present. They knew that a big public wedding might invite unwanted attention and potential backlash. "I wish we could invite my whole family," Grace said wistfully one evening as they pored over their guest list. "But I know some of them still don't understand our love." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "What matters is that we have each other and the people who truly support us," he reassured her. They chose a quiet garden for their ceremony, a place that symbolized growth and new beginnings. As they worked on their vows, they focused on their shared dreams and the future they wanted to build together. "I want to promise that we'll always fight for equality and education," Grace said, her eyes shining with passion. Marcus nodded, adding, "and that our love will be a beacon of hope for others facing similar challenges." Despite the joy of their engagement, Grace and Marcus couldn't ignore the whispers and stares that followed them. Some of their colleagues expressed concern about how their marriage might affect their careers. A few of Grace's childhood friends stopped returning her calls. But for every person who turned away, there were others who rallied around them. Their true friends helped with wedding preparations, offering support and encouragement. The principal at Marcus's school even offered to officiate the ceremony, a gesture that moved them both deeply. As the wedding day approached, Grace and Marcus found strength in each other and in their unwavering belief in the power of love to overcome prejudice. They were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, hand in hand, as husband and wife. The news of Grace and Marcus's marriage spread through their conservative town like wildfire. What had been subtle disapproval soon erupted into outright outrage and harsh criticism. The couple found themselves at the center of a storm they had hoped to avoid. Grace's family was the first to express their dismay. Her mother called her in tears, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disappointment. "How could you do this, Grace? What will people think? You're throwing away everything we've taught you." Grace tried to explain, her heart heavy with each word. "Mom, I love Marcus. He's kind, intelligent, and shares my values. Can't you see past our differences?" But her mother wouldn't listen. She ended the call abruptly, leaving Grace feeling hollow and alone. At church that Sunday, Grace felt the weight of disapproving stares. Whispers followed her as she walked to her usual pew. Mrs. Thompson, her former Sunday school teacher, approached her with a tight-lipped smile. "Grace, dear," she said, her voice sickly sweet, "we're all praying for you to see the error of your ways. It's not too late to call off this mistake." Grace left the church early, fighting back tears. Even her closest friends began to distance themselves. Mara, her best friend since childhood, sent a text message that broke Grace's heart. "I'm sorry, Grace, but I can't be your maid of honor. I don't support this marriage, I hope you understand." At work, Grace overheard her colleagues discussing her relationship in hushed tones. "It's a shame," one of them said, not realizing Grace was within earshot. "She was such a promising young teacher. This will ruin her career." The constant criticism and isolation began to take its toll on Grace. She found herself questioning her decisions, doubting the strength of her love for Marcus. The rift in her personal life grew wider with each passing day, leaving her feeling more alone than she had ever felt before. Grace and Marcus leaned on each other as the storm of disapproval raged around them. Each day brought new challenges, but their love grew stronger with every test. One evening, as they sat on their small porch, Marcus took Grace's hand. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his eyes filled with concern. Grace sighed, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's hard, Marcus. I never thought my own family and friends could be so cruel." Marcus nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know, sweetheart. It's been tough on both of us." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their situation hanging heavy in the air. Then, Grace straightened her shoulders and looked at Marcus with determination. "We can't keep living like this," she said. "Maybe it's time for a change." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" Grace took a deep breath. "What if we moved? To a bigger city, somewhere more diverse and accepting?" Marcus considered her words, a small smile forming on his lips. "You know, that's not a bad idea. We could start fresh, find a place where our love isn't constantly under attack." They spent the next few weeks researching different cities, looking for places with good schools and more open-minded communities. Finally, they settled on a vibrant, diverse city a few hours away. The decision to move wasn't easy, but as they packed up their belongings, both Grace and Marcus felt a sense of hope they hadn't experienced in months. They were leaving behind the pain and judgment, but taking with them their dreams and their love for each other. On the day of the move, Grace took one last look at her childhood home. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she felt Marcus's comforting hand on her shoulder. "Ready for our new adventure?" he asked softly. Grace nodded, wiping away her tears. "As long as we're together, I'm ready for anything." Grace and Marcus arrived in their new city with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. As they drove through the bustling streets, they couldn't help but feel a sense of hope wash over them. This was their chance for a fresh start, a place where they could build their dream together. After settling into their small apartment, they wasted no time in searching for the perfect location for their school. Days turned into weeks as they explored different neighborhoods, looking for a space that could accommodate their vision. One rainy afternoon, as they were about to call it a day, Marcus spotted an old, abandoned building tucked away on a quiet street. "Grace, look at that," he said, pointing to the dilapidated structure. Grace's eyes lit up. "It's perfect," she whispered, already imagining the possibilities. The building was a mess with broken windows and crumbling bricks, but Grace and Marcus saw beyond its current state. They saw classrooms filled with eager children, a playground echoing with laughter, and a community coming together. They reached out to the property owner and, after some negotiation, managed to secure the building at a price they could afford. The real work was just beginning. Every day after their regular jobs, Grace and Marcus would head to the old building, armed with cleaning supplies and renovation tools. They scrubbed floors, patched walls, and painted cheerful colors on the once drab surfaces. "This room will be perfect for art classes," Grace said one evening, her hair speckled with paint. Marcus nodded, a proud smile on his face. "And that large space in the back? We can turn it into a library filled with books from all cultures." As they worked, they discussed their plans for the curriculum, focusing on creating a safe and inclusive environment for children of all backgrounds. They wanted to build a place where diversity was celebrated, where every child felt valued and understood. "We'll have cultural exchange days," Grace suggested, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm, "where kids can share their family traditions and learn from each other." Marcus agreed, adding, "And we'll make sure our teaching staff is just as diverse as our students. Every child should see themselves represented in their educators." As Grace and Marcus dove into the renovation process, they quickly realized the enormity of the task before them. The old building seemed to reveal new problems at every turn. Leaky pipes, faulty wiring, and crumbling plaster became their daily challenges. One particularly frustrating day, Grace slumped against a freshly painted wall, leaving a smear on her shirt. "Marcus, I don't know if we can do this," she said, her voice trembling with exhaustion. Marcus set down his paintbrush and walked over to her, enveloping her in a comforting hug. "We can, Grace. We will. Remember why we're doing this," he whispered, his voice steady and reassuring. Grace nodded, drawing strength from his embrace. They had come too far to give up now. Financial struggles added another layer of stress to their efforts. The renovation costs were mounting, and their savings were dwindling fast. They started reaching out to local businesses and community members for support, but many doors were closed in their faces. "It's like our old town all over again," Grace sighed one evening as they reviewed their dwindling budget. Marcus took her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "We'll find a way. We always do." Their determination paid off when a local hardware store owner, moved by their vision, offered them discounted supplies. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As they worked to gather resources for their school, they faced skepticism from some members of the education board. "Your idea is too idealistic," one official told them during a meeting. "How do you plan to make this work?" Grace and Marcus exchanged a look, drawing strength from each other. Grace spoke up, her voice clear and passionate. "With love, understanding, and a belief that every child deserves a chance, that's how we'll make it work." Despite the daily challenges and setbacks, Grace and Marcus found joy in their shared dream. Every small victory, a newly painted classroom, a donated set of textbooks, a supportive email from a future parent, renewed their spirits. Grace and Marcus stood nervously at the entrance of their newly renovated school building. They had spent weeks preparing for this open house event, hoping to introduce their vision to the community. Colorful banners hung from the freshly painted walls, and a table laden with homemade refreshments stood in the corner of the main hall. As the appointed time arrived, they exchanged hopeful glances, but as minutes ticked by, their smiles began to falter. The large room remained mostly empty, with only a handful of curious onlookers trickling in. "Maybe they're just running late," Grace whispered, trying to keep her voice upbeat. Marcus nodded, squeezing her hand reassuringly. Among the small crowd, they noticed a few local officials, their faces etched with skepticism. One of them, a stern-looking woman from the education board, approached them with a frown. "I must say this all seems rather ambitious," she said, her eyes scanning the room critically. "How do you plan to manage such a diverse student body?" Grace took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We believe that diversity is our strength," she explained, her voice clear and passionate. "Our curriculum is designed to celebrate differences and foster understanding." The woman raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "That's a nice sentiment, but practicality is another matter entirely." As the evening wore on, they faced similar questions and doubts from the few parents who had shown up. One father, his arms crossed tightly over his chest, voiced his concerns bluntly. "How can you guarantee my child's education won't suffer in this experiment of yours?" he asked, his tone sharp. Marcus stepped forward, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the man's agitation. "Sir, we're not conducting an experiment. We're creating a nurturing environment where every child can thrive. Our teaching methods are backed by research and our commitment is unwavering." Despite the challenges, Grace and Marcus remained steadfast. They answered each question with patience and enthusiasm, their eyes shining with the same passion that had brought them together. As the last of the visitors left, Grace and Marcus found themselves alone in the quiet building. The sparse attendance and skepticism they had faced could have been disheartening, but instead, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. "We knew this wouldn't be easy," Marcus said softly, pulling Grace close. Grace nodded, her determination evident in her voice. "But it's worth it. Every child we can help makes it worth it." They stood there in the school they had poured their hearts into, more committed than ever to their shared dream. The first day of school arrived, and Grace and Marcus stood at the entrance, their hearts pounding with excitement and nerves. As the clock struck 8, a small group of children began to arrive. There were only 12 in total, but each represented a different background, culture, or ability. Grace knelt down to greet a shy little girl with glasses. "Welcome to our school, sweetheart. I'm Mrs. Grace," she said warmly. The girl's eyes lit up as she whispered, "I'm Lily." Marcus greeted a boy in a wheelchair, helping him navigate the new ramp they had installed. "Hey there, buddy. I'm Mr. Marcus. Let's get you settled in." As the children filed into the colorful classroom, Grace and Marcus exchanged a look of pure joy. This was the moment they had dreamed of for so long. The day was filled with introductions, games, and learning activities designed to help the children bond. Despite their limited resources, Grace and Marcus had poured their creativity into every aspect of the classroom. Handmade posters adorned the walls, and recycled materials had been transformed into unique learning tools. During story time, Marcus read a tale about friendship and acceptance. The children sat in a circle, their eyes wide with wonder. Grace noticed how Lily, who had been so shy earlier, was now leaning in, completely engrossed in the story. At lunchtime, they all sat together at a long table. Grace and Marcus had prepared a variety of foods to represent different cultures. They encouraged the children to try new things and share stories about their favorite meals from home. "My grandma makes the best tamales," said Carlos, a boy with a bright smile. "What are tamales?" asked Maria, genuinely curious. As Carlos excitedly explained, Grace and Marcus watched with pride. This was exactly the kind of cultural exchange they had hoped to foster. Throughout the day, they faced small challenges: a language barrier with one student, a minor disagreement over sharing crayons. But each obstacle was met with patience and understanding. Grace and Marcus worked tirelessly, adapting their approach to meet each child's unique needs. By the end of the day, the classroom was buzzing with laughter and newfound friendships. As the last child waved goodbye, Grace and Marcus collapsed into their chairs, exhausted but elated. "We did it," Grace whispered, happy tears in her eyes. Marcus nodded, his voice filled with emotion. "This is just the beginning." As the weeks passed, Grace and Marcus's initial elation gave way to a sobering reality. The school's finances were stretched thin, and bills were piling up. One evening, after the children had gone home, they sat at a small desk, poring over their budget. "We're short on this month's rent," Grace said, her voice trembling. She pushed her hair back, worry etched on her face. Marcus squeezed her hand. "We'll figure it out, love, we always do." They brainstormed late into the night, determined to keep their dream alive. The next morning, Grace arrived at school with a box full of homemade muffins. "Bake sale?" Marcus asked, raising an eyebrow. Grace nodded. "Every little bit helps." They set up a table outside the school, selling baked goods to passers-by. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Marcus, meanwhile, began offering after-school tutoring sessions for a small fee. As word spread about their financial struggles, the community slowly began to rally around them. Parents volunteered their time, helping with maintenance and classroom assistance. One family donated a barely used computer. Another brought in art supplies. Despite these gestures of kindness, making ends meet remained a constant challenge. Grace and Marcus cut costs wherever they could. They used secondhand books, made their own cleaning supplies, and even started a small vegetable garden to supplement their food budget. One particularly tough month, they faced a difficult decision. "We might have to skip our own paychecks," Marcus said softly. Grace nodded, her eyes filled with determination. The children come first, always. Their sacrifice didn't go unnoticed. When Lily's mother found out, she organized a fundraiser at her workplace. It wasn't enough to solve all their problems, but it gave them a much-needed boost. Through it all, Grace and Marcus never let their financial worries affect the children's experience. They continued to pour their hearts into each lesson, each smile, each small victory. Their love for their students and each other kept them going, even on the hardest days. Grace and Marcus knew they needed to do more than just keep their school afloat. They wanted to create a sense of community and showcase the incredible talents of their diverse student body. With determination in their hearts, they set out to organize a series of events that would bring people together and raise awareness for their school. Their first event was a cultural fair. Grace's eyes sparkled with excitement as she explained the idea to the children. "We're going to celebrate all the beautiful cultures in our school family," she said, her voice warm and encouraging. The students threw themselves into the preparations with enthusiasm. Colorful posters lined the hallways, announcing the upcoming fair. Parents volunteered to set up booths representing their heritage, bringing traditional foods, clothing, and crafts to share. On the day of the fair, the school playground transformed into a vibrant tapestry of cultures, the air filled with the aroma of spices and the sound of laughter. Marcus stood at the entrance, greeting visitors with a wide smile. "Welcome to our little slice of the world," he said to each newcomer, his eyes crinkling with joy. As the fair bustled with activity, Grace moved from booth to booth, her heart swelling with pride. She watched as children eagerly explained their family traditions to curious visitors, their faces beaming with newfound confidence. The success of the cultural fair inspired Grace and Marcus to plan more events. They decided to host a talent show, giving their students a chance to shine on stage. For weeks, the school buzzed with excitement as children practiced their acts. On the night of the talent show, the old gymnasium was packed. Parents, siblings, and community members filled every seat, their faces expectant. As the lights dimmed, Grace squeezed Marcus's hand, her eyes glistening with tears of joy. One by one, the children took the stage. There was Lily, her voice clear and strong as she sang a lullaby her grandmother had taught her. Then came Ahmed, performing a traditional dance with grace beyond his years. Each act was met with thunderous applause, the audience united in their appreciation of the children's talents. As the final curtain fell, Grace and Marcus stood on stage, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. The events had not only raised much-needed funds for the school, but had also fostered a sense of unity and pride in their community. Grace and Marcus's tireless efforts began to bear fruit as word spread about their unique and inclusive school. More families started enrolling their children, drawn by the promise of a nurturing environment that celebrated diversity and individuality. One morning, as Grace walked through the colorful hallways, she noticed a small figure hunched over an easel in the art room. It was Lily, a shy girl who had barely spoken a word since joining the school. Grace paused, watching as Lily's brush danced across the canvas, creating a vibrant landscape filled with swirling colors. "That's beautiful, Lily," Grace said softly, careful not to startle the child. Lily looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. For a moment she hesitated, then a small smile bloomed on her face. "Thank you, Ms. Grace," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Over the next few weeks, Grace and Marcus watched in amazement as Lily blossomed through her art. Her paintings adorned the school walls, and she began to open up to her classmates, sharing stories about her creations. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself working closely with Ahmed, a bright student who had been struggling with math. Every afternoon, they would sit together, poring over worksheets and problem sets. Marcus's patience never wavered, even when Ahmed grew frustrated. "You can do this, Ahmed," Marcus encouraged, his voice steady and calm. "Let's break it down step by step." Slowly but surely, Ahmed's confidence grew. His test scores improved, and the look of pride on his face when he solved a difficult problem was priceless. One day, Ahmed burst into the classroom, waving a paper in the air. "Mr. Marcus, look!" he exclaimed, his eyes shining with excitement. "I got an A on my math test." Marcus's heart swelled with joy as he hugged the beaming boy. "I'm so proud of you, Ahmed," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've worked so hard for this." As Grace and Marcus watched their students grow and thrive, they knew that their dream was becoming a reality. Each small success, from Lily finding her voice through art to Ahmed conquering his fear of math, reinforced their belief in the power of education and acceptance. As Grace and Marcus's school continued to grow and flourish, their success caught the attention of local politician, Councilman Richard Thornton. Known for his conservative views and traditional values, Thornton saw the school's progressive ideals as a threat to the community he believed he was protecting. One crisp autumn morning, Grace found an official-looking envelope in the school's mailbox. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a letter from the city council. The words blurred before her eyes, but the message was clear. The school was under investigation for alleged violations of local education standards. "Marcus," Grace called out, her voice quivering. "We have a problem." Marcus rushed to her side, his brow furrowing as he read the letter. "This doesn't make sense," he said, shaking his head. "We've followed every regulation to the letter." Over the next few weeks, Grace and Marcus found themselves facing a barrage of obstacles. Surprise inspections disrupted their classes, and anonymous complaints flooded the school board. They worked tirelessly to address each concern, but it felt like fighting an uphill battle. One evening, as they were leaving the school, they found their car tires slashed. A note was tucked under the windshield wiper, its message chilling. "Leave now, or face the consequences." Grace's eyes filled with tears as Marcus crumpled the note in his fist. "We can't give up," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Our students need us." Marcus wrapped his arms around her, his embrace warm and comforting. "We won't," he promised. "We'll face this together." The threats escalated. Graffiti appeared on the school walls overnight, bearing hateful messages. Anonymous phone calls disrupted their classes, and false rumors spread through the community like wildfire. Despite the growing pressure, Grace and Marcus refused to back down. They organized community meetings, inviting parents and local residents to see firsthand the positive impact their school was making. They reached out to supportive council members, presenting evidence of their compliance with educational standards. But Councilman Thornton's influence ran deep. He used his platform to paint Grace and Marcus as outsiders, intent on corrupting the town's values. His words stirred up fear and suspicion among those who had previously been indifferent to the school's presence. As the challenges mounted, Grace and Marcus found themselves drawing closer together. Their love, tested by adversity, only grew stronger. They spent long evenings talking, planning, and reminding each other of the reasons they started this journey. One night, as they sat on their small apartment balcony, Grace turned to Marcus with tears in her eyes. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. "But I'm not giving up." Marcus squeezed her hand gently. "Neither am I," he said, his voice full of determination. "We're not alone in this fight." Indeed, they weren't. As news of the school's struggles spread, support began to pour in from unexpected places. Former students' parents, touched by the positive changes they'd seen in their children, started speaking out. Local business owners, impressed by the school's community involvement, offered their backing. Grace and Marcus decided to channel this growing support into action. They organized a peaceful march through the town center, inviting students, parents, and community members to join them. On a sunny Saturday morning, they were amazed to see hundreds of people gathered carrying signs with messages of love and acceptance. As they walked, Marcus noticed a small group of counter-protesters led by Councilman Thornton. Instead of ignoring them, he made a bold decision. He approached the group, extending his hand to Thornton. "We may not agree, but we're all part of this community," Marcus said calmly. "Would you like to visit our school and see what we're really about?" Thornton hesitated, clearly caught off guard by the invitation. Though he didn't accept immediately, the interaction was captured by local news cameras, showing Marcus's willingness to engage in dialogue. The march ended at the school, where Grace and Marcus had organized an open house. They invited everyone, supporters and critics alike, to tour the classrooms, meet the students, and ask questions. The halls buzzed with conversation as people from different backgrounds came together, many finding common ground in their desire for quality education. The unexpected support came on a crisp autumn morning. Grace and Marcus were sipping coffee in their tiny office when a knock on the door startled them. A young woman with a notebook in hand introduced herself as Sarah Chen, a journalist from the local newspaper. "I'd like to write a story about your school," Sarah said, her eyes bright with interest. "I've been hearing whispers about the amazing work you're doing here." Grace and Marcus exchanged a surprised glance. They had grown used to negative attention, and this offer felt like a ray of sunshine breaking through storm clouds. Over the next few days, Sarah spent time observing classes, talking to students and parents, and interviewing Grace and Marcus. She listened intently as they shared their vision of a school where every child felt valued and supported. When the article appeared on the front page of the Sunday edition, Grace and Marcus couldn't believe their eyes. Sarah had captured the essence of their dream beautifully. The piece highlighted the school's inclusive approach, the dedicated teachers, and the positive impact on students' lives. "Look at this," Marcus said, his voice choked with emotion as he read a quote from a parent. "My daughter used to hate school. Now she can't wait to go every morning." Grace wiped away a tear. "We're really making a difference, aren't we?" The article sparked a wave of interest in the community. People who had never heard of the school before were now talking about it. Some were skeptical, but many were intrigued by the idea of a truly inclusive education. Then something remarkable happened. Donations started trickling in. It began with small amounts, $20 here, $50 there. But as word spread, larger contributions followed. A local business owner offered to sponsor new textbooks. A retired teacher volunteered her time to tutor struggling students. Each donation, no matter how small, felt like a vote of confidence. Grace and Marcus carefully logged every cent, determined to use the money wisely to improve the school. One afternoon, as they were reviewing the latest donations, Marcus looked up at Grace with a smile. "You know what this means, don't you?" he asked. "We're not alone anymore. People believe in us." Grace nodded, her heart full of hope. "It's a start," she said softly. "A real chance to keep our dream alive." One sunny morning, a familiar car pulled up in front of the school. Grace's heart skipped a beat as she recognized her parents and older brother stepping out. They looked uncomfortable, their faces a mix of curiosity and lingering disapproval. "They're here," Grace whispered to Marcus, her voice trembling slightly. Marcus squeezed her hand reassuringly. "It'll be okay. Let's show them what we've built together." As Grace's family approached, she took a deep breath and greeted them with a warm smile. "Mom, Dad, Tim, I'm so glad you came." Her mother's eyes darted around nervously. "Well, we wanted to see this place for ourselves." Grace led them into the school, her heart pounding. The hallways were filled with colorful artwork and inspiring quotes. Children of various backgrounds laughed and chatted as they moved between classes. In the first classroom they visited, a young girl was presenting a project about her family's cultural traditions. Grace's father raised an eyebrow as he watched the other students listening attentively, asking thoughtful questions. Next, they observed a math class where Marcus was teaching. He expertly guided a diverse group of students through a challenging problem, encouraging teamwork and creative thinking. Grace noticed her brother Tim nodding approvingly. As they walked, Grace explained their vision for the school. "We want every child to feel valued and supported here, regardless of their background." Her mother's expression softened slightly. "It does seem different from what we expected." They paused by a bulletin board covered in student achievements. Grace's eyes welled up as she pointed to a certificate. "This is Jason's. He struggled with reading when he first came here. Now he's at the top of his class." Her family exchanged glances, a hint of understanding dawning in their eyes. As they neared the end of the tour, a small girl ran up to Grace, hugging her tightly. "Ms. Grace, I got an A on my science test." Grace beamed, kneeling down to the child's level. "That's wonderful, Sophia. I'm so proud of you." When Grace looked up, she saw her family watching the interaction. For the first time in years, her father's stern expression had softened into something resembling pride. Grace and Marcus sat at their shared desk, staring at the letter that had just arrived. The foundation that had been their primary source of funding was withdrawing its support. Grace's hand shook as she set the paper down. "What are we going to do?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Marcus reached out and took her hand, his touch warm and comforting. "We'll figure it out, just like we always do." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of stress and uncertainty. Grace and Marcus worked tirelessly to find alternative funding sources. They reached out to local businesses, applied for grants, and even dipped into their personal savings to keep the school afloat. One evening, as they were going over the budget for what felt like the 100th time, Grace broke down in tears. "Maybe we were foolish to think we could make this work," she sobbed. Marcus pulled her into a tight embrace. "No, Grace, what we're doing here matters. These kids need us." Despite their best efforts, they had to make some tough decisions. They cut back on supplies, canceled field trips, and even considered reducing staff. But through it all, their love for each other and their students never wavered. One particularly difficult day, as they were cleaning up after classes, Marcus found Grace staring at a wall covered in student artwork. "Look at these, Marcus," she said softly. "Remember when Jamal couldn't even hold a pencil? And now look at his drawing." Marcus stood beside her, his arm around her waist. "And there's Lily's poem. She was so shy when she first came here." They stood there for a long moment, drawing strength from the tangible evidence of their impact. Grace turned to Marcus, her eyes shining with renewed determination. "We can't give up," she said firmly. "Not when we've come so far." Marcus nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "We won't. We'll keep fighting for this school, for these kids. Together." As they left the building that evening, hand in hand, their steps were lighter. The road ahead was still uncertain, but their love and dedication to their shared dream burned brighter than ever. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the schoolyard, Grace and Marcus were tidying up after another challenging day. The financial strain was taking its toll, but they pressed on, their love for each other and their students fueling their determination. Just as they were about to lock up, a sleek car pulled into the parking lot. A tall, well-dressed man stepped out, his eyes scanning the building with a hint of nostalgia. "Is that—" Marcus squinted, recognition dawning on his face. The man approached with a warm smile. "Mr. Johnson, it's me, Ethan Moore. Do you remember?" Marcus's eyes lit up. "Ethan, of course I remember you. What a surprise." Grace watched as Marcus embraced his former student, curiosity piqued. Marcus turned to her, beaming with pride. "Grace, this is Ethan. He was one of my students years ago. Ethan, this is my wife, Grace." Ethan shook Grace's hand, his gaze taking in the school building. "It's wonderful to meet you, Grace. I've heard about the amazing work you two are doing here." They invited Ethan inside, giving him a tour of the modest classrooms. As they walked, Ethan shared stories of his time as Marcus's student and how those lessons had shaped his life. "You always believed in me, Mr. Johnson," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion, "even when I didn't believe in myself." In the main office, Ethan's eyes fell on the stack of unpaid bills on the desk. His expression grew serious. "I heard you've been having some financial difficulties." Grace and Marcus exchanged a glance, unsure how to respond. Ethan continued, "I've been looking for a way to give back. When I heard about your school and its mission, I knew this was it." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a check, handing it to Marcus. "I want to help keep this dream alive." Marcus's eyes widened as he looked at the amount. Grace gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Ethan, we can't possibly—" Marcus stammered. Ethan held up a hand, smiling. "Please accept it. What you're doing here is important. It's an investment in the future." Tears welled up in Grace's eyes as the reality of this gift sank in. This donation would provide the financial stability they so desperately needed. With Ethan's generous donation, Grace and Marcus felt a renewed sense of hope and purpose. They wasted no time in putting the funds to good use, eager to transform their modest school into the educational haven they had always envisioned. The first order of business was renovating the building. They hired local contractors to repair the leaky roof, replace outdated electrical systems, and give the entire structure a fresh coat of paint. The once drab exterior now gleamed with vibrant colors, reflecting the joy and energy within. Inside, the classrooms underwent a complete makeover. New desks and chairs replaced the worn-out furniture, and bright, inspirational posters adorned the walls. Grace and Marcus carefully selected each item, ensuring it would create a warm and welcoming environment for their students. With the basic improvements in place, they turned their attention to expanding their programs. Marcus focused on introducing advanced technology into the curriculum. He set up a computer lab equipped with the latest software, allowing students to explore digital learning in ways they never could before. Grace, meanwhile, worked on implementing innovative teaching methods. She researched and adapted cutting-edge educational techniques, tailoring them to suit their diverse student body. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she explained her ideas to Marcus. "We'll use project-based learning to engage the students," she said, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "And we'll incorporate mindfulness practices to help them manage stress and improve focus." As word spread about the school's transformation, more families became interested. Parents who had been hesitant before now eagerly enrolled their children, drawn by the promise of a top-notch education in an inclusive environment. The hallways buzzed with activity as new students arrived, their faces a mix of nervousness and excitement. Grace and Marcus greeted each one personally, making sure they felt welcome and valued. In the classroom, the impact of their efforts was immediately apparent. Students who had once struggled now thrived, empowered by the new resources and teaching methods. A young girl who had been too shy to speak now confidently presented her science project to the class. A boy who had trouble focusing now sat engrossed in an interactive math lesson on a tablet. As the school flourished under Grace and Marcus's leadership, the community's perception began to shift. The once skeptical townspeople couldn't ignore the positive changes they were witnessing. Children who had previously struggled in traditional schools were now thriving, their smiles brighter, and their steps more confident as they walked to class each morning. Local businesses started to take notice too. The corner bakery donated fresh bread for the school's lunch program, while the hardware store offered discounts on supplies for their ongoing renovations. It seemed that with each passing day, another member of the community was won over by the school's mission. One crisp autumn morning, Grace received an unexpected phone call from her mother. "Grace, honey," her mom said, her voice hesitant but warm, "your father and I have been talking. We'd like to come see the school again if that's all right with you." Grace's heart skipped a beat. She'd barely spoken to her parents since their last school visit, not since they had expressed their disapproval of her marriage to Marcus. "Of course," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "We'd love to have you visit again." The day of the visit arrived, and Grace felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. As her parents walked through the school gates, she saw their eyes widen in surprise. The building, once dilapidated, now stood proud and welcoming. Marcus greeted them with a warm smile, extending his hand to Grace's father. After a moment's hesitation, her father shook it, a flicker of respect in his eyes. As they toured the progress of the school, Grace and Marcus shared stories of their students' achievements. They showed her parents the art room where a once shy girl had discovered her talent for painting, and the science lab where a group of curious kids were building their own robots. Grace's mother paused in front of a wall covered in children's drawings. Each picture depicted a diverse group of smiling faces with the words, "Our school family," written in colorful letters above. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she turned to Grace. I think I understand now," she said softly. "What you and Marcus are doing here, it's more than just teaching. You're changing lives." Grace felt a lump form in her throat. She reached out and squeezed her mother's hand, words failing her in that moment of connection. As they continued their tour, Grace noticed her father engaged in deep conversation with Marcus about the school's innovative teaching methods. The tension that had been present at the beginning of the visit had melted away, replaced by genuine interest and growing respect. As word of Grace and Marcus's school spread, it began to attract attention beyond their small community. Their innovative teaching methods and inclusive environment caught the eye of a national education magazine, which sent a reporter to cover their inspiring story. The day the reporter arrived, Grace and Marcus felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. They welcomed her warmly, eager to share their journey and the impact they were making on their students' lives. As they walked through the bustling hallways, the reporter's eyes widened at the sight of children from diverse backgrounds working together on projects, their laughter and chatter filling the air. In one classroom, a group of students was using virtual reality headsets to explore ancient civilizations. In another, children were tending to a small indoor garden, learning about sustainability and responsibility. "We believe in hands-on learning," Marcus explained, his voice filled with passion. "We want our students to experience the world, not just read about it in textbooks." The reporter nodded, scribbling notes furiously as Grace added, "And we make sure every child feels valued and included. That's the foundation of everything we do here." When the article was published a few weeks later, Grace and Marcus were overwhelmed by the response. Their phone began ringing off the hook with calls from educators across the country, eager to learn more about their methods. Local TV stations requested interviews, and even a national morning show expressed interest in featuring their school. The increased media attention brought unexpected support. A tech company offered to donate computers and tablets to enhance their digital learning programs. A children's book author volunteered to do weekly reading sessions for the younger students. Even a celebrity chef reached out, offering to revamp their cafeteria menu with healthy, kid-friendly options. As the school's reputation grew, so did its enrollment. Families from neighboring towns began inquiring about admission, drawn by the promise of a truly inclusive and innovative education for their children. Grace and Marcus found themselves at the center of a movement, their little school becoming a beacon of hope and excellence in education. They were humbled by the attention, but remained focused on their core mission, providing a nurturing environment where every child could thrive. As the school's success continued to grow, Grace received an unexpected phone call one evening. It was her mother, her voice trembling with emotion. "Grace, honey," she said, "we need to talk. Can we come see you and Marcus at the school?" Grace's heart raced as she agreed, unsure of what to expect. The next day, she and Marcus stood hand in hand at the school entrance, watching as Grace's parents and a group of her old friends approached. There was an awkward silence at first, broken only by the distant laughter of children playing in the schoolyard. Then, Grace's father stepped forward, his eyes brimming with tears. "We were wrong," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "We let our prejudices blind us to the beautiful thing you and Marcus have created here." Grace's mother nodded, reaching out to take her daughter's hand. "We're so sorry, sweetheart. Can you ever forgive us?" Tears streamed down Grace's face as she embraced her parents, years of hurt and separation melting away in that moment. Marcus stood by, his own eyes glistening with joy for his wife. One by one, Grace's old friends stepped forward, offering heartfelt apologies and words of admiration for what she and Marcus had accomplished. They shared stories of how they had watched from afar as the school flourished, gradually realizing the error of their ways. "We want to help," said Mara, Grace's childhood best friend. "If you'll have us, we'd like to be part of this amazing journey you're on." Marcus smiled warmly, putting his arm around Grace. "We've always believed in second chances here," he said. "We'd be honored to have your support." Over the next few weeks, Grace's family and friends threw themselves into helping the school. Her father, a retired carpenter, volunteered to build new bookshelves for the library. Her mother, a talented gardener, began working with students to expand the school's vegetable garden. Mara, who worked in marketing, offered to help spread the word about the school's programs, reaching out to her network to bring in more resources and support. Other friends organized fundraising events, volunteered in classrooms, and helped with after-school programs. Grace and Marcus stood at the entrance of their school, greeting guests with warm smiles and heartfelt handshakes. The air buzzed with excitement as families, supporters, and community members gathered for the celebration event. The school's auditorium was decorated with colorful banners and artwork created by the students. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle, facing a small stage adorned with flowers. As people took their seats, Grace and Marcus made their way to the front, hand in hand. Marcus stepped up to the microphone, his voice filled with emotion. "Welcome, everyone. We're so grateful to have you all here today. This school has been our dream for so long, and seeing it come to life, seeing the impact it's had on our community, well, it's more than we ever could have hoped for." Grace joined him, her eyes shining. "We'd like to invite some of our students and their parents to share their experiences with you all." A young girl named Lily was the first to take the stage. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her notes, but her voice was clear and strong. "Before I came here, I was always picked on for being different, but at this school I learned that being different is okay. Miss Grace and Mr. Marcus taught me to be proud of who I am." Lily's mother stepped up next, wrapping an arm around her daughter. "The change we've seen in Lily is incredible. She's confident, happy, and excited about learning. This school has been a blessing for our family." One by one, students and parents shared their stories. A father spoke about how the school had helped his son overcome a learning disability. A teenage boy described how Marcus had become a father figure to him, helping him navigate difficult times at home. As the testimonials continued, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Grace and Marcus listened, their hearts full of joy and gratitude. They saw their dream reflected in each story, a dream of creating a place where every child felt valued, supported, and empowered to reach their full potential. Grace and Marcus stood nervously backstage at the National Education Conference. The auditorium was packed with educators, administrators, and policymakers from across the country. Grace squeezed Marcus's hand, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Can you believe we're here?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Marcus smiled softly, his calm demeanor a soothing presence. "We've come so far, Grace. Our story needs to be told." As their names were announced, they walked onto the stage hand in hand, greeted by warm applause. The bright lights illuminated their faces, showcasing the years of hard work and determination etched in their features. Marcus began, his voice steady and clear. "Thank you all for having us here today. Our journey began with a simple dream: to create a school where every child, regardless of their background, could thrive." Grace continued, her passion evident in every word. "We faced countless obstacles, prejudice, financial struggles, and even threats. But we never gave up because we believed in the power of education to change lives." They took turns sharing their story, from their first meeting to the challenges they faced in starting their school. They spoke of the small victories that kept them going: a child's first successful math problem, a parent's tearful thank you, a community slowly coming together. As they described their innovative teaching methods and inclusive policies, the audience listened intently, many taking notes. Grace and Marcus emphasized the importance of creating a safe and nurturing environment where children could explore their potential without fear of judgment. "Our school isn't just about academics," Marcus explained. "It's about building character, fostering empathy, and preparing children to be compassionate, understanding adults." Grace added, "We've seen firsthand how this approach can transform not just individual lives, but entire communities." As they concluded their speech, the auditorium erupted in applause. Educators from various parts of the country approached them, eager to learn more about implementing similar models in their own communities. One principal from a small town in the Midwest shook their hands vigorously. "Your story is so inspiring," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "I've been wanting to make changes in my school, but I was afraid. You've given me the courage to take that first step." Grace and Marcus returned home from the National Education Conference, their hearts full of hope and renewed purpose. Little did they know that their inspiring speech had set in motion a chain of events that would bring even more recognition to their school. A few weeks later, on a crisp autumn morning, Grace opened an official-looking envelope with trembling hands. Her eyes widened as she read the contents. "Marcus!" she called out, her voice quivering with excitement. "Come quick." Marcus rushed to her side, concern etched on his face. "What is it, Grace?" She handed him the letter, tears of joy welling up in her eyes. "We've won the National Excellence in Education Award." Marcus read the letter, his expression changing from disbelief to pure joy. "This is incredible, Grace. Our little school, recognized on a national level." The award ceremony was held in Washington, D.C., with educators and policymakers from across the country in attendance. Grace and Marcus stood on stage, hand in hand, as the presenter read out their accomplishments. For their outstanding contributions to education and community building, we are honored to present this year's National Excellence in Education Award to Grace and Marcus, founders of Harmony Heights School. The audience erupted in applause as Grace and Marcus accepted the award. Tears streamed down Grace's face as she looked out at the sea of supportive faces. "This award isn't just for us," Marcus said into the microphone, his voice thick with emotion. "It's for every child who's ever felt different, every parent who's struggled to find the right school, and every teacher who's gone the extra mile to make a difference." Grace nodded, adding, "We hope this recognition shines a light on the importance of inclusive education and inspires others to create similar spaces in their own communities." The next morning, their story was featured on the front page of major newspapers and leading news websites. Television crews arrived at Harmony Heights School, eager to capture the magic that had earned such prestigious recognition. As cameras rolled, capturing the diverse group of happy children learning and playing together, Grace and Marcus shared their journey with the nation. They spoke of their initial struggles, the support they received from unexpected places, and the transformative power of education. Grace and Marcus stood in front of the newly renovated building adjacent to Harmony Heights School. The fresh paint gleamed in the sunlight, and a colorful banner hung above the entrance proclaiming Harmony Community Center, where everyone belongs. "Can you believe it, Marcus?" Grace whispered, squeezing his hand. "Our dream is growing bigger than we ever imagined." Marcus smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "It's amazing what love and determination can accomplish." The couple had worked tirelessly over the past few months to transform the old, abandoned warehouse into a vibrant community center. They envisioned a place where families could gather, learn, and support one another long after the school day ended. As they cut the ribbon to officially open the center, a small crowd of parents, students, and community members cheered. Grace's eyes welled with tears as she saw familiar faces in the crowd. Her family, who had once disapproved of her choices, now stood proudly in support. Inside, the center bustled with activity. Children gathered in a bright corner for story time, while teenagers huddled around computers in a state-of-the-art computer lab. In another room, adults attended a free English language class. "Look at this, Grace," Marcus said, gesturing to a bulletin board covered in flyers. "We've got after-school tutoring, art classes, job skills workshops, and even a community garden program." Grace nodded, her heart swelling with joy. "And don't forget the food pantry and clothing exchange. We're not just educating minds anymore. We're nourishing bodies and spirits too." As they walked through the center, Grace and Marcus were stopped by a young mother cradling a baby. "Thank you," she said, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "This place, it's changing our lives. I can work now because of the affordable childcare, and my older kids are getting the help they need with their schoolwork." Marcus placed a gentle hand on the woman's shoulder. "That's exactly why we're here. We're all in this together." As word of Harmony Heights School and its newly opened community center spread, Grace and Marcus found themselves at the center of a growing movement. Their innovative approach to education and community building had caught the attention of educators, activists, and policymakers across the country. One sunny afternoon, Grace sat at her desk, sifting through a pile of letters and emails. She looked up at Marcus, who was grading papers nearby, and smiled. "Can you believe this? We've got requests from schools in California, New York, and even Alaska." Marcus set down his red pen and walked over to Grace's desk. He peered at the screen, his eyes widening. "Wow, they're really interested in our model, aren't they?" Grace nodded, her eyes shining with excitement. "They want to know how we've managed to create such an inclusive environment. Some are asking if we can visit and help them set up similar programs." The couple spent the next few weeks preparing presentations and guides to share their experiences. They created detailed plans outlining their teaching methods, community engagement strategies, and fundraising techniques. One day, they hosted a video conference with a group of educators from a small town in the Midwest. The faces on the screen looked eager and hopeful as Grace and Marcus shared their story. "The key," Marcus explained, "is to build everything on a foundation of love and respect. When children feel valued, they thrive." Grace chimed in, "And it's not just about the children. We've found that by involving the whole community, we create a support system that benefits everyone." The educators on the screen nodded, taking notes and asking questions. One woman spoke up, her voice filled with emotion. "You've given us hope. We've been struggling with division in our town, but your story shows us that change is possible." As the weeks passed, Grace and Marcus found themselves juggling their school responsibilities with their new role as mentors and advisors. They received invitations to speak at conferences and contribute to educational journals. As the sun set on another busy day at Harmony Heights School, Grace and Marcus found a quiet moment to themselves. They sat on a bench in the schoolyard, hand in hand, watching the last few students leave with their parents. The gentle breeze carried the sound of laughter and chatter, a testament to the vibrant community they had built. Grace leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder, her voice soft with wonder. "Can you believe how far we've come, Marcus? Sometimes I have to pinch myself to make sure it's all real." Marcus squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with love and pride. "I know what you mean. It feels like just yesterday we were facing all those challenges, wondering if we'd ever see our dreams come true. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, remembering the obstacles they had overcome. The disapproval from Grace's family, the resistance from the conservative town, the financial struggles, and the political opposition, all of it had seemed insurmountable at times. "You know," Grace said, her voice thick with emotion, "there were days when I wanted to give up. But every time I looked at you, I found the strength to keep going." Marcus nodded, his own eyes glistening. "We've been each other's rock through it all. Our love gave us the courage to face every challenge head-on." As they reflected on their journey, they realized that their perseverance had rippled out far beyond their own lives. The school they had built was now a beacon of hope for so many families. Children who might have been marginalized elsewhere were thriving at Harmony Heights. Parents who once felt isolated now found a supportive community. "It's amazing to think about all the lives we've touched," Marcus mused. "Not just here, but in all those other communities that are following our model." Grace smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "We set out to make a difference in children's lives, but we've ended up changing so much more. Our love didn't just overcome the obstacles, it transformed them into stepping stones for others." As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Grace and Marcus sat in quiet contemplation. Their journey had been filled with hardships, but their unwavering love and determination had not only changed their own lives, but had also sparked a movement of inclusivity and hope that was spreading across the nation. As the years passed, Grace and Marcus's vision for Harmony Heights continued to grow and evolve. The school they had built with love and determination became more than just a place of learning. It transformed into a vibrant community center that brought people together from all walks of life. The once hostile community that had resisted their efforts now embraced the spirit of acceptance and unity that Grace and Marcus had cultivated. The community center bustled with activity from dawn to dusk, offering a wide range of programs and services that catered to everyone's needs. On any given day, the center was alive with the sounds of laughter, conversation, and music. In the mornings, senior citizens gathered for yoga classes and book clubs, finding companionship and purpose in their golden years. Afternoons saw children of all backgrounds playing together in the newly built playground, their differences forgotten in the joy of shared games and friendships. The center's walls, once bare and uninspiring, now showcased colorful murals painted by local artists, each telling a story of diversity and harmony. The library, stocked with books in multiple languages, became a sanctuary for knowledge seekers of all ages. In the evenings, the community kitchen came alive as families from different cultures gathered to share recipes and stories. The aroma of dishes from around the world filled the air, a testament to the rich tapestry of cultures that now called this place home. Grace and Marcus watched with pride as former adversaries became friends, breaking bread together and finding common ground. The politician who had once tried to shut down their school now volunteered his time to teach civics classes, having undergone a profound change of heart. The center also became a beacon of hope for those facing challenges. Support groups for various issues met regularly, providing a safe space for healing and growth. Job training programs helped community members build new skills and find employment, lifting many families out of poverty. As news of the center's success spread, visitors from other towns and cities came to learn from their model. Grace and Marcus welcomed them with open arms, sharing their experiences and offering guidance on how to create similar spaces of inclusivity and support in their own communities. The transformation of the community was nothing short of remarkable. Where once there had been suspicion and division, now there was understanding and unity. The dream that Grace and Marcus had nurtured with their love had blossomed into a reality that touched countless lives, proving that with determination and compassion, even the most deeply rooted prejudices could be overcome. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the schoolyard, Grace and Marcus stood hand in hand, their eyes filled with love and gratitude. The once dilapidated building behind them now stood proud, its walls adorned with colorful murals depicting scenes of unity and hope. The anniversary celebration was in full swing, with laughter and joyful chatter filling the air. Friends, family, and supporters had gathered to honor the couple whose love had transformed not just their own lives, but the entire community. Grace's parents, who had once turned their backs on her, now beamed with pride as they watched their daughter and son-in-law greet guests. The journey to acceptance had been long and challenging, but the power of Grace and Marcus's unwavering love had softened even the hardest hearts. Marcus's former student, now a successful entrepreneur, raised a toast to the couple. "To Grace and Marcus," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You taught us that love knows no boundaries and that dreams, no matter how impossible they seem, can come true with perseverance and faith." Tears glistened in Grace's eyes as she squeezed Marcus's hand. She looked around at the faces of those gathered, students whose lives they had touched, parents who had become their staunchest supporters, and community members who had once been skeptics but now stood as friends. As the evening wore on, Grace and Marcus found a quiet moment alone. They stood at the edge of the playground, where children of all backgrounds now played together without a second thought. Marcus wrapped his arm around Grace's waist, pulling her close. "Can you believe how far we've come?" he whispered, his voice filled with wonder. Grace leaned her head on his shoulder, a contented smile playing on her lips. "It's more than I ever dared to dream," she replied softly. They stood in comfortable silence, watching as the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky. Their love story, once ridiculed and dismissed, had become a beacon of hope for all who witnessed it. It was a testament to the power of love to overcome prejudice, to build bridges where there were once only walls. As the celebration continued behind them, Grace and Marcus turned to face each other. Their eyes met, filled with the same passion and determination that had brought them together all those years ago. They clasped hands, their fingers intertwining as naturally as they had on their wedding day. Is love strong enough to overcome deeply ingrained prejudices as shown by Grace and Marcus's journey? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your perspective. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to my channel. I am spending hours upon hours writing these heartwarming stories for you, and your support is what keeps me going.